Hi, hello. I'm John of Stroker Engine. I thought today I'd show you a little bit of the workshop here. I'm in my engine assembly room. This engine I'm working on right here is a 460 Windsor engine that I built using a dart block and AFR cylinder heads, and it runs on propane or LPG auto gas. This engine on the dyno made 612 foot-pounds of torque, and it made 545 horsepower. It's a truck engine, and so the horsepower was achieved at 5,400 RPM. So I thought I'd show you a little bit more around the shop today. Before I start, let me just give you the websites that I use. They're called strokerengine.com, strokerengine.com.au, performancev8engines.com, performanceengines.co.nz for my New Zealand affiliate, and finally kiwiairboats.com. Stroker Engine, or myself, John Nyson, specialize in building performance V8 engines, specifically for street application. While I have built a few motors for drag racing and drag bike racing even, my primary focus is on street performance. I don't specialize in doing any particular type of racing engine, but I can certainly hook you up with something if you're looking for that. Further, with my partner Andy Rowe in New Zealand with Kiwi Airboats, we can also provide you airboats which will go up rivers beyond what a jet boat can do, because it can travel across the land and isn't restricted to the water. So you may want to check out the section of the website that features some of that information. I also work with an affiliate in Europe. For them, I find American cars, Corvettes, Camaros, trucks, older hot rods, 55 Chevys, whatever, and I can provide those cars converted to run on LPG propane auto gas, and we ship them over to Europe and try and get them there at an affordable price and provide something that can be driven around on the streets of Europe at a much lower cost than using gasoline, petrol. And I can also modify these engines to make substantial power, like this Windsor engine here making 600 foot-pounds of torque. Some of the big blocks I do make well over 700 foot-pounds of torque, and 700 horsepower is not difficult. Just a little bit about myself. I started out in Timaru, New Zealand, and moved to Christchurch to complete an apprenticeship in automotive machining at Smith Regrinds. It was a 4-year apprenticeship, and when I finally qualified in 1979, I achieved the highest marks for the exam of that year. I'm not bragging, perhaps there was less competition than anything else. I only say that to point out that I'm very zealous when it comes to engine performance, engine building. I take a keen interest in it, and consequently I spent most of my life doing it. I did some drag racing in Christchurch at Ruapuna during 1980 and 1981. And at the end of 81, I moved to California, the United States, and 35 years have gone by. In that time, I've worked in a number of different engine building shops, machine shops, been involved in a few other trades as well. And in 2001, I started Stroker Engine and started building high-performance V8 engines. It wasn't long before I realized that the marketplace for me to focus on was overseas. And since focusing on that, I've shipped engines to Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Holland, Poland, China, Russia, Sweden, Denmark, and I know there's a few I'm forgetting as well, plus motors around America as well. I'm staggering a little bit when I'm speaking. I'm not a great oratory. I'm an engine builder. And but I thought I'd give you a little bit of my background. My focus is to try and provide engines overseas at the best cost possible by minimizing shipping costs, consolidating shipping, working with customs. The goal is to get an American-built engine overseas, having paid the American price with no markup, the shipping and any taxes or duty that's due, and provide an engine that's substantially less expensive than one purchased locally, having gone through the conventional channels. If you're looking for the lowest priced engines, I know where they are found in the United States, whether they're built by one of my competitors that I work with, or eBay or Craigslist. I can obtain engines for you from these resources, as well as other things. If you find a great deal on Craigslist, for example, on a supercharger, and you'd like to purchase it, I can help you get it. Once I've obtained it for you, I can then ship it out. If it's going to New Zealand, I can piggyback it to one of my containers going out to New Zealand. If it's Australia, it typically has to go by itself, being such a big country. The odds of me shipping an engine to your city at the same time that you're needing a part sent in is a little more difficult. Europe, I'm sending cars to Europe on a regular basis, and so adding parts in the container with the car is not a problem. Other things like differentials, transmissions, anything you can buy in the United States, I can help you obtain it if that's what you need. So let's take a quick look around the shop. This is that Ford Windsor. Started life as a Dart SHP block. Being a Windsor, it's a 9.5 deck height, so I was able to put a 4 1/4 inch stroke crank in it, 6.2 long connecting rods to have a decent rod to stroke ratio, and I used AFR 205 heads. I then used a open plenum intake manifold and a throttle body and a biphase propane fuel injection system. This is where the fuel goes in, and the fuel actually returns back out of an internal, the internal line feeds into the fuel rail, and then an external line feeds back out through the same hose back to the tank. It's a very clever system. I've had 2 different ignition systems on it that I've been working with. The distributor has one reluctant tooth in it now. I have removed the other 7, which gives me a cam position sensor. And the sequential fuel injection and ignition is handled by this crank trigger wheel that I've mounted down here. I've also included a power steering pump, a serpentine belt drive with the alternator, and an AC pump. Once again, this motor made 612 foot-pounds of torque and 545 horsepower at about 5,400 RPM. Over there is a 557 big block Ford that I'm building. I'm hoping to make about 750 horsepower with this engine, and I will be fabricating a gasoline fuel injection system for it. This is a block. It's a LQ9 6.0 LS type engine. Even though it looks silver, I painted it that way. It's actually an iron block. I'll be putting LS7 heads on this motor, and it's going in a restoration hydro boat in New Zealand. It'll operate between 4,000 and 7,000 RPM, so I was looking for the largest head that I could put on it. In this case, it'll be an RHS 291 intake port, 291cc intake port LS7 head. This here is an 871. The case has got the rotors out right now. What I'm going to be doing with this, it's a used blower that I'm freshening up. I will go through and tighten up all the clearances in it. I'm going to run it just a couple of thousandths tighter than it was originally set up, and quite a little bit of work in that. Bullet cam. I use quite a few bullet cams. This, as mentioned, is my assembly room. This is a 427 Windsor engine. Once again, I used a Dart block. It has Edelbrock Victor Junior heads on it, and a pretty serious Super Victor intake manifold. And this engine is going to be in a magazine article, or rather an online magazine article, enginelabs.com if you want to visit them. And we're going to run nitrous oxide through this motor. Should be quite a lot of fun. This motor here is just in the mock-up stage. It'll be a 421 cubic inch small block Chevrolet using a Dart little M block, AFR 220cc heads on it, and I'll be mounting a Whipple screw compressor on this engine. I'm hoping to make somewhere around 950 horsepower. This is a 350 Chevy block. I'm going to build a 383 out of this. You can see here where I've clearanced it for the rods. And this is the later model roller cam block that I like to use. You can see that this can fit the GM style hydraulic lifters. That makes building this type of motor a little less expensive than the earlier model blocks where I would use retrofit type lifters. I do engine overhauls when necessary, but typically it needs to be something special. This is a 1956 Oldsmobile rocket motor, 324 cubic inches. I went through the motor. This motor was in pretty good shape when I found it. I cleaned it up, new rings and bearings. The pistons were good, new timing chain. I had a performance camshaft ground for it, something on the milder side. And I cut the cylinder heads to raise the compression ratio a little bit. Then I found a 4-barrel manifold for it, as this was originally a 2-barrel motor. And then I mounted an Edelbrock carburetor to it and set up the throttle linkage to interface with the cast iron hydro transmission. Here we see a small block Ford on my engine run stand. This is where I start engines up and run them for about an hour, make sure there's no funny noises, no oil leaks. I break in the rings, and then I'm able to retorque the cylinder heads afterwards, reset the valve lash. In most cases it's a hydraulic roller camshaft, so I just reset the adjustment on it. They do move after the first startup. They shouldn't, but the valves seem to settle down, everything seems to settle down, and I usually end up making a slight difference to the adjustment. I run the motors with mufflers on them. I don't need to listen to a lot of noise, although I certainly will pull the mufflers off from time to time and see how much noise we can make. There's my company logo up there. This is one of the many LS motors that I send to China. Right now I'm preparing 2 of them to go. This is an LS3 480 horse motor. They're $6,800 plus $1,100 for the ECU wiring harness, mass airflow sensor, and an electric accelerator pedal, because these motors are drive-by-wire. I send these to China to run on off-road racing vehicles. As far as I know, I'm the first one to send V8 engines to China for this application. This is another LS style motor. Once again, this is an LQ9 block. It's 408 cubic inches. It's all pretty much finished. What I'm having to do is reset the location for the alternator. Typical, you buy an aftermarket serpentine belt kit and it's supposed to just bolt right on. But I found that I'm going to have to space the alternator out 3/8 of an inch to get all the pulleys to line up correctly. This is the kind of work I do here to make sure everything is as turnkey as possible. I don't build so-called crate engines where I'm building the same engine over and over again and then advertising them for sale on the internet. I specialize in building custom engines, so if you know what you want, contact me, discuss it, and we'll figure out what it actually costs to build what you want. Here's a motor that I sent out. It's a local motor here in California. It is put about 5,000 miles on it. The customer was very pleased with it, but then he wanted more performance. Originally, well, this motor is a 590 cubic inch big block using a Dart Big M block and Airflow Research 335 cylinder heads. The whole idea was to make a very aggressive street motor for this customer's 91 Chevy pickup truck. He found it was a real tire burner, couldn't get traction with it, so he borrowed a set of slicks from a friend and hammered it, and it jerked the truck so hard there's a slight twist in the truck now. And so whenever you're putting in a high performance engine into your car, you need to think about the ramifications. Brakes, transmissions being strong enough, differentials being strong enough. And then in this guy's case, if you put slicks on it, can the chassis handle it? Well, originally this motor had a hydraulic camshaft and a very big hydraulic roller. The duration at 50 lift was 261. And I had a single carburetor on it. It was a World Merlin manifold, and he wanted to know if I could get any more power out of the engine. And so I decided to change the camshaft to a solid roller, and I'm using the Morrell bushed solid lifters. This allows us to run solid lifters on the street without the fear of them breaking down after 2,000 or 20,000 miles, which is so typical with needle bearing solid rollers. The duration on the cam now is what is it, 282 at 50, so it's a seriously big cam in this motor now. The idle will be very radical, and you can see there I've gone to a tunnel ram manifold. As this was originally designed for 454, and this motor displaces almost 600 cubic inches, I spent about 16 hours porting it out. I mean, I took as much metal out of this manifold as was possible. The walls are quite thin. I actually put a coating of epoxy on top of it to make sure that I didn't break through the walls at all when I raised the runners. So I took about 100 thousandths, 120 thousandths all the way around, all the way up. And so this thing should flow a ton of air right now. As you can see, the other cylinder head's off. It's here. I'm going through making sure all the valves are seated properly, and I'll be putting a much heavier spring on it. I think that's all that's in the shop currently. I'll probably do update videos as time goes by and show you some of the other engines that I have in the wings. I have a bunch of Clevelands to build, and there's always 383 Chevys to build, and I have some more LSs along the way. So if you're interested in the motor, send me an email. A couple of other things of interest. I do fabrication work. This here is a plate that I'm going to use to mount a Ford motor against a GM transmission. The Ford, or rather the Oldsmobile, required an exhaust system, both to run on the engine stand and for the customer. And so I made these headers, extractors for the customer. They may not be the prettiest extractors in the world, but they will fit the vehicle and improve the performance over the stock cast iron manifolds. So once again, I make what I need to get the job done. Here are a couple of 750 double pumper carburetors that I'm just going to clean up and put a rebuild kit in for a local customer. Well, it's time to wrap up this video. I'm in the office right now. I'm actually working on this video, editing it. I notice there's some breakup in the sound. I guess my camera's misbehaving. It's so typical with technology. You rely on stuff, emails, you send them, customer doesn't get them. Video camera. This one I'm using right now, I had to put a piece of tape over the microphone because when I put it in the dyno cell, when the engine got to full noise, the camera would switch off because it was so loud in there, so I had to try and muffle the sound. So anyway, that was a tour of the shop, and if you're looking for an engine, contact me. We'll talk about what you're looking for. As mentioned at the beginning, I don't build crate engines per se. There's an engine that's already pre-designed, pre-assembled or partially assembled, and then completed in the color you're looking for, maybe a change of camshaft. Every motor I build is unique. I discuss it with the customer, If it's a 347 small block Ford, we talk about whether you want to run a budget cylinder head on it, something that costs less than $1,000, or an AFR head, perhaps a 185, which is the most versatile for that type of motor, or a 205 or even a 195 if you wanted to turn the motor over 6,000, 6,500 RPM. So every engine is a unique designer. I've never built two engines the same, and so that's my niche, selling overseas and providing engines specifically for the application that you're looking for. And I try and get them to you at the best price I can. It's a very competitive market, and so I do my best to fill a niche in it. If you're looking for the cheapest engine you can find, look on eBay. You'll probably find something. If you're overseas, I can help you get it. If you're looking for something that runs on LPG or even natural gas, I have experience in that field. And as mentioned, if you're looking for a car, I'm working on my accent. I have both a New Zealand and American accent at the same time. It makes me sound kind of unusual, but if you're looking for a car for Australia, I can look around in the United States, Camaros, Corvettes, older things like 56 Oldsmobiles, pickup trucks. If you're in Europe, we have an outlet over there for both my engines and for cars that we're importing. Our focus is converting them over to LPG, so it reduces the fuel expense of running a larger engine American car. So you're welcome to contact me, Stroker Engine, strokerengine.com, .com.au, performancev8engines.com. We also got performanceengines.co.nz, and Kiwi Airboats. And I'm the go-to guy over here, so write an email at strokerengine@hotmail.com, or you can call me on my cell phone. Call the States in 1-760-508-4562. Thanks for watching this video. I know it was a bit long and maybe a little on the boring side, but I'm an engine builder, not a movie actor.